Lightning like Steve McQueen. I'm in the fast lane when the light turns green. And I built tough, I ain't nothing but grit. Cause I made rugged blood, sweat, and spit. Yeah, like a horse I fly. Better push yourself in for a bumpy ride. I like to play hard, but I work harder. And I weather the storm cause I'm built stronger.
Start jumping like I did on stage.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Morning Show, the top morning show in transportation, coming to you guys live every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central. I know we're early today, but that's what happens when you're out on the road. Clearly, we're not in studio today. We are out in Houston, Texas. I was in San Diego last week, so the Freight Coach Road Show is still in full effect, and we are joined by a repeat guest, my friend Debbie Sparks.
Woo!
Debbie, thank you. Thanks
Yes.
again for joining me, and thanks again for having me at this event. I got you guys. I came out to DC last year for the event, and that was my first real exposure to the Digital Solutions Conference, cybersecurity, and all of that stuff. And really, it was, when I connected with Caroline and the lead up to it, I was kind of like, "What's the NMFTA?" And, because everybody out there, you hear the TIA, the ATA, the TCA. And then I started doing my research on that. And I'm like, oh, wow, you guys have been around for a very long time. Yeah. So what is the NMFTA?
So, it's so funny. I remember years ago, there was the Oldsmobile commercial. They did that big campaign. It's not your father's Oldsmobile.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of the change that's happening at NMFTA. So our roots are in standardization. Mm-hmm. So we set the standards for how commodities are classified. We also do SCAC. So those are our legacy tools, products that we've done for the LTL industry. And about 10, almost 12 years ago now, our leadership said, there's this whole world of cybersecurity that's coming down the pike. Let's start looking into it.
Yeah.
So we've been doing this on the research side, really looking into truck, trailer, what could happen separate from the enterprise. So separate from your office back end, IT, how can perpetrators get into the vehicle through the truck or trailer? So we've been doing research. We've been working with all of the government agencies for many years. And when I joined almost 18 months ago, I think I was pretty fresh when I met you. What we realized, breakfast.
Yeah.
Anybody want a snack? So what we realized is that was great, but how are we helping the carriers? How are we telling them what was happening? And right around that period, we had a group of industry leaders that came to us and said, look, we want to create the digital paperwork flow for LTL.
Yeah.
So we said, all right, we're going to do it, because then immediately what happened is when we start to digitize the industry, now cybersecurity made sense. Now we knew we had to safeguard the digitalization of the paperwork going back and forth. So it kind of gave roots. Where we will ultimately be is we will be the organization setting the standards for cybersecurity, for digitalization. So it's still in our roots. It's still what we're doing. But over the next 5 years, our number one job is going to be training and education, making people aware, figuring out what does it mean, and then ultimately the tools. If we're really going to walk the walk and talk the talk, we've got to make sure the tools are there.
What, because I think, a lot of individuals, when they think cybersecurity, they think any real digital threats, they do think back office. They think everything that isn't on the truck, but like that is some of the most vulnerable infrastructure out there, right? And because I had Antoine and Ben on my podcast about a month ago, and I mean, I think those guys have forgot more about cybersecurity than I will ever even understand. But it's like when you listen to that, though, it does make you start to wonder, right? Because as trucks and trailers and really any component, I mean, you can even look at forklifts and anything with a technical component that is out there is at risk of being hacked.
Yep.
And, somebody might hear this and be like, oh, I'm just a one truck operation. I think those are almost the more vulnerable, because it's like the smaller, you'd think because you're a small business, you would like, they wouldn't want you. But I think like what I learned at last year's conferences is actually you're the prime target for a lot of these guys.
Yep. Well, and they're the prime target because they're focused every day. Trucking's hard.
Yeah.
So you're focused every day on running your business. You're focused on making money. You're focused on making sure your customer's happy. And now the world's changing around you. So, your now network, the way you're going to start sending in your bill of lading digitally, that could come in, connect into your customer, and who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So you're very vulnerable. You're open to what could happen. And that's, one of the things I'm so grateful for is growing up in the trucking industry from women in trucking and from the truckload side is that we're aware of how many small operators there are and how essential they are, that's one area we've got to stay focused on. And we've got to bring the tools to do it. I mean, I will do a shout out. One of the things I'm most proud of is this conference and all of our tools, all of our research, always free, because it's that essential. We've got to make sure that everything we have is transparent and is handed to everybody, and we will get you access to somebody that you need. The opening panel this morning, CISA, Secret Service, TSA, all of their resources. Everybody's going about this because it's so new to make sure everybody's got the tools.
Yeah.
Still can be hard.
No, exactly. And I think that, that's the thing, because all of my experiences on domestic truckload, and I've been a freight broker for 15 years and 12 years. Somebody corrected me on that. But my whole thing is like identity verification is huge right now, because there are companies, I mean, fraud is everywhere, and I think that, from a digital standpoint, because, you were talking about the bill of lading, and that right there is where a lot of people get access to it. That's the starting point, right? And then they find company information, they hack into something, and then all of a sudden they go and they change bank account information for all direct deposits, and then it's going to all the scam artists and stuff that are out there. And then, because I've talked to a couple of trucking companies who got hit, and they were, it was like $15,000-$20,000 before it was noticed by the company. I mean, because even their bank and everything didn't even realize that stuff was happening. So it's like, I mean, I think about that as a small business all the time.
Well, and what you just nailed is not even the banks thinking about it. And what's so interesting, just listening to that panel. So these are the experts from the government agencies. And the first question they were asked is, what got you into cybersecurity? This challenge that we have with cybersecurity is so new. Every one of the panels, no one went to college for it. No one stepped into it.
Nobody woke up and was like, I'm going to do cybersecurity.
And yet we need a lot of people to do it. And they're all learning it at the same time. We're all learning it at the same time. I mean, literally, when we look at today and we look at 5 years from now, we're going to be a completely different industry.
Yeah.
I mean, we have our IT department, and then we have our technicians in the maintenance department. And what you were just saying, that whole asset side of the truck, we're structured in trucking separate.
Yeah.
And we need to come together.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where the advantage is for the small operator,
No, definitely.
He's more nimble.
And then it's like, you look at the technical components of the trucks now, ELDs, right? Like that's a very real thing. I can't be quoted on this, but I want to say somebody was like, their information got stolen that was out there. And again, like, what is it that stops somebody from going in and hacking a trailer and, I think refrigerated freight all the time that goes in there and hacks it and shuts the reefer unit off or increases it by 2 degrees, and then it spoils the entire load and everything else. And then any other technical component that comes along with your truck, what stops that? I think and then like, that's one thing that I want to see more and more people talk about, or talk to your companies that you are utilizing their services in your business. What infrastructure do you have in place to stop a cyber attack, to stop all of this stuff? Because again, like, there's just so much that's out there. I mean, especially, with the DOT, your e-logs, everything goes right into the FM CST, all the reporting data. What stops somebody from going in there and saying that, oh, all of your trucks are over, and now boom, you're getting fined for all of this stuff.
Right. And what do you do about it? I mean, what we have to do, the number one thing we keep hearing about is these tabletop exercises.
Yeah.
Getting everybody together, sitting down at a table and literally scaring the pants off you. I mean, and everything we're hearing is probably not even going to be in place in 2 years from now.
Yeah.
What we're doing. And, hearing from these other vendors that are coming in with these ideas and solutions, but it has to evolve every day. I mean, what's blowing my mind is, they're running commercials. What is it, Microsoft or Google? 650,000 short. Even within our own ranks, there's got to be people that have a passion and interest, that are driving trucks or running these small companies, that need to come and help. Can they go to the bigger carriers? Can they go? And then what is the cost? Is there grant money for all of this? Is there help and assistance? And those are some of the things that we want to tackle. One of the things we've been talking about, and we've been venturing it with other people, is there a TMS that can be made available for our small folks that they can go into, that keeps the ransomware out, that protects their digital assets as they're transferring them into their other parties that they're working with. And we feel like that's our responsibility as the nonprofit to fix it for all of us. Not sure how to go about that. So if anybody has tools or solutions, I think we have to bring that. But, I think a real difference for me just in the year from sitting with you last year, it was so overwhelming, and yet so many solutions have now come to light. I had 3 people right after the opening session that came up. One is all asset driven, that they have a way through technology to know before any breach is going to happen to that truck or trailer. And they can tell the driver before their warning light even comes on the dashboard, this is what's about to happen.
Yeah.
But then what's the plan behind it?
Yeah. I'm right there with you too, is, okay, so we notify the driver, great. The driver pulls over, but then what? Right. Then what comes after that? And then again, too, is it's like, if it's a small fleet, they don't have the staff in place to even take somebody away from doing a lot of, like, again, it's like these dispatchers or the back office support or whatever, they already have enough going on, right? If you've ever worked in a small business or a startup, everybody's wearing multiple hats. And then if that were to happen, then what? Yep. Right. And I think that's why it's so valuable for individuals to come to this event or reach out to you guys, because, again, free is always a great price for a business, when you're talking about the information, it always fits into the P&L. But I'm also, of like, you need to get ahead of a lot of these scenarios before they happen. I talk about the proactive versus reactive mindset that comes into a lot of this. Is you are at risk, no matter what you want to say, whether you're one truck, 50 trucks, everybody, or a freight broker, everybody is at risk of this from happening. And it's like, the more and more we become digital of all components, right? And then especially the AI factor that comes into a lot of it, everybody, like, you always want to think, oh, it's easier, it's not going to happen now. And I think, like, the more we do this, the more the exposure grows with all of that.
Well, and I've got to do a shout out to Estes. I think one of the things that I am so impressed with what they did is, I think for so long, and it's not even so long, the last 36 months, when people were being hacked, there was a sense of shame. Like, obviously we didn't have our system set up, and they buried their head in the sand, and we're like, oh, we're going to try to kind of keep our head low. And what Estes did is they came right out and they said, we've been attacked. We've had a cyber attack. Yeah. This is where we are. They communicated. And the beauty in that is they made it transparent, but they're also changing our behavior as an industry. They said it's okay to come forth and say, I've been hacked, because then everybody else gets a chance to respond around them. We still got to move the goods. We still got to get it from point A to point B. Their drivers knew, they could hear what was going on. The media knew, that could tell the story. And then, we get to look at solutions, and it wasn't an embarrassment. It wasn't something to be ashamed of. It's now something, I think Estes is going to be marked as kind of that turning point in our industry, that this is real. Yeah. This is real, and it's something we have to address and face.
No, I agree. I'd like to compare it a lot to, I don't know if you follow baseball much, but in the early 2000s with Roger Clemens and the steroids, and like Andy Pettitte, same thing. Roger Clemens denied it ever happened. Andy Pettitte said, no, that's exactly what I did. I was making a lot of money and I wanted to prolong my career. And everyone's like, oh, okay, cool. That's that comes to mind with me too, as a company, like, because I broke down the article of Estes in the first time that it all became public. and everything was lockstep and key. No, this is what happened. This is what we're doing to address it. Everybody's information safe. We found it, and then we're building it back. And then they also, what I think I like the most about that article is they've also said, hey, we don't have it all figured out yet, but we're going to, and we're going to let you know.
Yes.
But most importantly, your information's safe, I think was the big message of that one. And then again, it's just like, that's the, if you look at it from a, Estes is what, probably the number 2 LTL carrier in the market out there. That should be a sign to every regional operator out there and small player out there that if they had it, it's only, I don't want to say it's only a matter of time, but the likelihood of it happening to you increased with that one case right there.
And you have to imagine, the lawyers, the police, everybody's probably telling them, don't say anything.
Yeah.
That's what they're guiding and coaching them on. And they did the opposite, and it just, I can't say enough about it. It's interesting. And I know I keep going back to education and who needs to be involved. We have 3 different universities here at the conference. And I asked them last night, I said, do you have to know how to write code? That's so intimidating. What's the right DNA? What do you tell a middle schooler at the career fair? What is the right attributes you have to get into cybersecurity? Guess what they might have been? Any idea? 2 of them.
I have no idea.
I would have thought code.
ADD.
Yeah, okay. The 2 things they actually said was good at math and creative.
Okay.
And they said the real creative is somebody, and a lot of patterns. They said people that like patterns, that see a break. They said, it's that creative side. For us to succeed in that actual real cyber realm, it's thinking outside of the box. And when we think about trucking, we're really good at that. We're constantly finding a new route, a new way to get it to point B, from point A to point B, that I really think, walking away from this show, I think I'm going to be going back to our board and asking that we do scholarships from within the industry for people to go and get certified training, whatever we have to, from within.
That might be what you guys could do, is start your own certification process to become of that. I like that. I think that's a really good idea. I mean, let's be honest. A lot of these universities, I'm not speaking for them, they got a lot of money, like they could partner up, sponsor some of these people and get them through that. And again, it's taking that awareness piece out of it and training them, because I think that most companies need to employ somebody from a cyber perspective, right? Or, I'm a entrepreneur at heart. This might be an opportunity for somebody out there to start a business and offer this level of service out there to the masses within transportation.
Yep. And there is a need. I mean, and I think the biggest thing that we're hearing from vendors is they don't even understand the complexity of trucking.
Yeah.
And that's why I really feel like we need to do something to teach and educate those that are already in the industry. They already know it, and they'll know their area. So if we can get, brokers, we can get the small owner operators, we can get the larger carriers, whatever their specialty or segment is, if we're training them, we're almost building that infrastructure to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
And then they can all come together and figure out how to do this. I mean, the craziest thing is that I can remember being with a group of peers at a conference 5 years ago, and we were talking about associations and what was going to be needed in the future. Never did the word cybersecurity come up. We always kept thinking, more tools for drivers. And that's how quickly this has changed and evolved. And yet, I have to imagine a lot of people listening this morning are going, my God, one more thing to worry about.
Yeah.
We've got so much that we have to do. So we really do have to simplify it. We have to make it easy. We have to make it not threatening. And just simple things that the 5 key things that people can do right away to try to insulate themselves. One of the biggest takeaways was the multiple verification. And I think about, I got an email from, I knew it was a bad phishing email.
Nigerian prince. No.
But it was, right, but it was my bank.
Yeah.
I was like, how do they know my bank?
Yeah.
And I've been on high alert ever since, and it's then where do you start? So we think about just all of our personal accounts.
Yeah.
And then we think about all of our business accounts. Where do you start?
No, I'm right there with you. And because I've seen that come across, and, I always pay attention to the email address. And then I've also known that, because the bank, at least my bank calls if they need something. They've never emailed me and said, hey, I need you to do that. That might be, something to, like, if people are listening to this right now, that's where I would start. Like, call your bank, because, protecting your I think protecting your financials is probably the first thing for a lot of companies. Yes. Right. So I think call your bank and then verify, hey, how are you going to reach out to me? And, because I think about that in talking to the companies that you source with. Again, what do you do from a cybersecurity perspective? If there is a breach, how will you notify me? Again, your information is on the line at that point. And, I want to go back to what you were saying there about, building up that solution coming from the industry. I think, like, people who've actually been in one of those situations before, like, that's where the case study will come from. That's where the product will be developed to help offset a lot of this stuff. And I talk about this all the time. The best tech solutions that come into freight come from freight. Yep. Because every industry has its own nuances at the end of the day, right? Like, I'm not trying to say, like, oh, we're on our own island, but, like, that tribal knowledge, that experience, that's where all the value comes from. And you can digitize it, you can teach it at scale, but that's where it's going to come from, right? Yep. I'm not saying that somebody who's smart outside of freight can't come in and figure it out, but those nuances that come from the industry, that's where, like, the most clear path, I think, to a solution can come from.
Yeah, it's funny, as you were talking, what I was thinking about is, definitely has to come from within, but some of the other things that we can do right away. One of the panelists just said, and everybody in the room laughed, but I'm going back on Wednesday and I'm going to ask, is our backup server on our same network? He said that a lot of the mistakes a lot of us make, we all back up. We're going to back everything up. We're going to back it up to the cloud. Well, is it going to the cloud? How do you access it? And if you are breached, is your backup really there to turn it right back on? It's almost telling ourselves to start questioning everything that we do.
Yeah.
And maybe that's one more of those little basic steps. Is what I'm doing automatic? And should I stop and say, why do we do this? And what happens if I get hacked? Will I have access to this?
Yeah.
Is your hack plan on your internet? And what happens if they take your internet down?
Yeah.
How do you access it? But, the good news is that there's other industries that are a lot more advanced that we're going to learn from. We're going to hear from aerospace. We're going to hear a lot over the next couple of days of what they've been doing. But I think for NMFTA, the real thing that we're seeing is that historically, when you think of national disasters, the trucking industry hasn't always had a seat at the table when we look at the government and how they handle it. Now, because of what we learned coming out of COVID and how essential the transportation industry is and the work that we're doing here, we're going to have a seat at those tables because we are critical infrastructure. And we are seeing the big agencies come and they want us to be their partner. Because they know the essential nature of what we do every day.
It's funny you brought that up, because I was talking at breakfast this morning, and they, with all the unsettling stuff that's going on in the world right now, they said that the actual biggest threat is the information and the flow of information that goes on out there. So again, that digital footprint that's going on, where it's almost like it's going to be the days, I'm not saying that, like, wars aren't going to, like, become a thing or anything, but it's going to be more of a digital war than anything to control. Because, you think, how easy are people manipulated? Look at the way that hackers work right now, right? They send that email out, click on this link, right? Hey, if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. Click on this link, upload your information, you're safe. Mental, it gets in your head. You're like, oh my gosh, my money or my whatever that is. There's an emotional component that comes along to all of this stuff. So it's like, this is where we are as a society, right? So I think, like, obviously, if somebody mailed you a letter, which, for those of you who are listening, that's how things used to happen back in the day. But, like, if you think about that, and somebody, now it comes in the form of, whether it's a text message. How many phishing text messages do you get out there
Well, but you got to jump in. Now we've got AI.
Yeah,
Now
exactly.
AI is your boss's voice calling you on your phone, telling you, hey, I know you're at the cyber conference at Houston, but we've had a breach in our system. I need you to transfer X thousands of dollars over here. And it sounds like your boss. It's the phone number of your boss. I mean, we're just talking about, I feel like I'm Debbie Downer, we're just starting to say, oh, here we can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Did you just self-nickname yourself, Debbie? No, I'm just kidding.
There you go. Yeah. I mean, and that's why, I think that the work of what we need to do to make sure that people have tools to understand what's happening and in bite-sized pieces.
Yeah.
Antoine's the head of our cybersecurity. And what I love about Antoine is that he makes everything he says so relatable.
Correct.
He talks about cybersecurity as locking your house, locking your windows, and locking your front door.
Yep.
And where are the family jewels hidden?
Yep.
Are they in a jewelry box on the dresser? Because they're going to get to them.
Yep.
How do you hide them?
Yep.
How do you keep it all safe?
And I think that's exactly like where, as you guys build out content or whatever it is for that solution for all the members to utilize. And, again, it's not just members that can get in and see how you can do this.
Everyone.
And I think that's where it is, right? It's like, hey, follow these 5 steps, have a plan, right? That's, if you look at any successful business or any successful situation out there, have a plan in place, know what to do. Like you said, locking the house. I'm like OCD to the 100th degree. And my wife, if she doesn't listen to me because she hears me talk enough at home, but like that's exactly it. I do the same routine every single night to go through it. I have that checklist of things as well, because again, I need to be prepared, right? Like I have to be, I'm very much ABC 1, 2, 3 in my approach. And I'm not saying that makes me immune from a lot of this stuff, but again, that was one of my biggest takeaways from Antoine when I had him on my show. Have a plan and follow that plan in the event something happens, because otherwise it's about controlling your emotions in that moment, right? Because it's like, well, what do you mean your boss called and just said transfer $50,000 to this? That's not right. Hold on. We have an SOP for that. Go back, do X, Y, and Z. And I think it's never going to solve any of this stuff, but it's about how do we bring awareness? How do we minimize people's risks to it?
Yep. It's funny. When Antoine does his training, my big takeaway that he gave me is I'm horrible with passwords.
Yeah.
And I know how essential they are. And I know there's the double authentication, and I'm doing more of that. But he gave a really good tip for passwords. And he said, you create a phrase. I don't know if he taught you that, but no. I now, wherever I am, like if I'm on Google, I will create or let's say it's Amazon, I want to put a password for my Amazon account. He says, create a phrase. So it's just a sentence about Amazon, like, I love Amazon because I get everything next day. Now that's really long, but you change out characters and question marks so that it's easy to remember.
Yeah.
But there's all kinds of tips. There's all kinds of tools. Antoine is great at it. The other thing that he was sharing is putting things not where you would look for them, not create that linear walking down the hall of the house to steal the electronics, the jewelry. You've got to put the jewelry in a deep safe underground somewhere with 3 different locks so that when the hacker does come in, they don't take everything. You get to put the jewels in private areas so that the damage will be minimal. Yeah. But we got to make sure everybody knows how to do that.
No, and I think that's great. And I really think that, again, is it's bringing it back to that elementary level of, hey, just start here. Right. And that, I think, because most businesses, and again, like I don't want to fear monger, but it's also a very real thing that could affect your organization at any given moment in time. And that's why you need to have a plan. And I'm really excited about this. And that is our time for today. Oh. It's amazing how fast it goes, right?
Oh my gosh. I love this.
I know.
Right, you're going to stay with us.
Oh, I'm here. I'm here today and tomorrow. And we're going to
next year.
Yeah, next year and the year after that and the year after that. And as long as Marley approves it, maybe one of these times I'll have a stage and like flamethrowers and like a smoke machine.
Well, you didn't ask. I mean, we can have that.
We'll have that next year.
I love it. I love it.
How does anybody find out more, Debbie? How does anybody reach out to the NMFTA?
nmfta.org.
Perfect. It's
That
as simple
easy.
as that.
Yep.
That's going to be it for today, you guys. We'll be back tomorrow. I might be back at my normal time, but you guys join no matter what time I go live, because we just make stuff happen out here,
So
you guys.
good.
And we're
So
showing you
good.
the reality of growing stuff, because it's not always the same every single day. But we'll be back tomorrow. As always, you guys, if you guys got value in what you heard here, subscribe to the show, you guys. Share it out there in your network, because if you see value, your network's going to see value as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And we'll be talking to you soon. And now I'm going to end the stream over here, because I don't have a cool person that can just make all this stuff happen on the back end. It'll happen.